In the last video, we saw the rise of Geikukujo, the phenomenon in which lower-ranking samurai began rising up to take power from lords of greater might, giving birth to the concept of the Sengoku daimyo. The early famous example, of course, being Hojo Soun, the daimyo whose ambitions would eventually lead to the rebirth of the Hojo clan. However, at the same time as Hojo Soun was making his way in the east, several clans began vying for their own regional power in the west. By the turn of the century, in 1500, Western Japan was ablaze in rivalries between clans, the two main powers in the West being the Aochi and the Otomo, having frequently come into conflict with one another following the end of the Onin War. Other key players in the region were the Shoni and the Yamago clan. The Aochi had gained their prominence from accumulating great wealth through their trade with Korea and China, which all funneled through the important Ochi trade port of Yamaguchi, often referred to as the Kyoto of the West. The Otomo, on the other hand, had amassed their power over hundreds of years, being the clan that primarily defended Kyushu from the Mongol invasions of the late 1200s, and had become a major supporter of the Ashikaga Shogunate following the overthrow of the Kamakura Shogunate. Things would begin to further escalate. 1 year later, in 1501, Ashikaga Yoshitane, a previous shogun who had been deposed in 1493, had sought protection by the Ochi clan head, Ochi Yoshioki, who allowed Yoshitane to establish his new power base in Yamaguchi, insisting that he was still the legitimate shogun, aiming to one day march back and retake Kyoto. Ochi Yoshioki supported Yoshitane, mostly due to his aggression towards the Hosokawa clan, who still held sway over Kyoto and were in support of the new shogun, Ashikaga Yoshizumi. Shogun Ashikaga Yoshizumi would in time declare Yoshitane and Yoshioki enemies of the state, ordering surrounding clans to march on the Ochi. The already hostile Otomo clan would answer the call, along with the Shoni, who would set out to destroy the Ochi, laying siege to the Ochi-controlled Umagatake castle, resulting in the largest battle of the conflict. The Otomo would be successful in taking the castle, but would ultimately be unable to hold it, as it would be taken back by Ochi forces soon after. Throughout the following years, minor engagements would be fought between the two factions with no real exchange of territory. This would eventually cause the two sides to sue for peace in their stalemate, allowing Yoshitane and Yoshioki to turn their attention back on Kyoto. The Ochi would begin a period of consolidation as they built up their supplies for their march on the capital, also being joined by the western branch of the Takeda clan. Finally, in 1508, the conditions would seem right to invade, as an opportunity presented itself due to the constant infighting within the Hosokawa clan, who began appearing increasingly weak. This would cause several separate branches of the Hosokawa clan to break off and switch sides to the Ochi, as Yoshioki's forces neared the capital, making it so that by the time the Ochi clan actually reached the capital, there was no other choice than for Shogun Ashikaga Yoshizumi and his remaining Hosokawa allies to flee. Ashikaga Yoshitane would be restored as shogun, giving Yoshioki the position of Kanrei, the shogunal deputy. The Hosokawa clan would continue their fight against the Ochi for the next few years, forcing Yoshioki to remain in the capital instead of returning home. Over the course of the war, the Hosokawa would actually end up retaking Kyoto from the Ochi for a brief period of time, until Yoshioki would lay claim to it once again after his victory over the Hosokawa at the Battle of Funa-Okayama. The conflict would eventually come to an end in 1512, when Ashikaga Yoshizumi suddenly died, breaking the Hosokawa will to fight. Yoshioki would continue to remain in the capital until 1518. In the years after the end of the fighting with the Hosokawa, there would be some resemblance of peace and stability in central Japan. However, in his absence, a new unchecked threat would begin to rise in the west. The Amago clan, led by Amago Tsunehisa, had over time become mighty and ambitious. Their presence was increasingly seen as a threat when the western branch of the Takeda clan broke away from the grips of the Ochi and pledged their allegiance to the Yamago. In 1517, the western Takeda would turn on the last Ochi ally in Aki province, the young Komatsumaru, head of the small and seemingly insignificant Mori clan that held control of Yoshida Koriyama Castle. The western Takeda would begin launching raids against the Mori clan, eventually causing Komatsumaru's relative, Mori Motonari, to set out and meet their Takeda enemies at the Battle of Arita Nakaide, being outnumbered nearly 5-1. Yet Motonari would still hold strong in the face of overwhelming foes. Initially, Mori forces would engage the Takeda vanguard, until the main bulk of the Takeda forces would eventually arrive, being led by the western Takeda daimyo, Takeda Motoshige. They would meet on opposite banks of the Matauchi River, with the Takeda pressing the attacks against the much smaller Mori army, trudging into the water. Motonari and his men would be continually pushed back, as Motonari constantly tried to rally his men to stand their ground against the non-stop incoming waves of Takeda troops, until finally, a miracle would happen. The daimyo of the western Takeda, Takeda Motoshige, would advance across the river and aim to join the fray, only to be struck and killed by a Mori arrow. This would cause the Takeda army to break and rout, resulting in a Mori victory. Motoshige's death would lead to the decline and eventual destruction of the western Takeda clan. The surprising defeat of the Takeda impressed Amago Tsunehisa enough to the point that he would offer Motonari one of his daughters in marriage. Motonari would agree, thus abandoning his former Ochi masters and forming an alliance between the Mori and Amago clans. Years later, in 1522, Tsunehisa would launch a new campaign against the Ochi, calling on Motonari to lay siege to Kagamiyama Castle, while he advanced on Kanayama Castle. Motonari would succeed in taking Kagamiyama Castle, but unfortunately, Tsunehisa would be repelled and forced to retreat from Kanayama, ending the brief conflict. However, Motonari's success would only serve to further the power and rise of the budding Mori clan, further propelled 1 year later when in 1523, the head of the Mori clan, Kanatsumaru, would die unexpectedly, allowing Motonari to finally take control of the Mori clan for himself. So, what can we learn from this? The Ochi clan would initially be the great power of the West, but when Ochi Yoshioki decided to march on Kyoto to reinstall the deposed shogun, he would allow new powers to rise in the West during his absence, most notably the Yamago, and eventually the Mori, as the Mori clan would eventually become one of the most famous clans of the Sengoku Jidai. Coming from humble origins, Mori Motonari would skillfully establish the Mori clan as a contender in the West. In the next video, we will continue looking at wars in the West and in the South, as new clans rise and old clans fall. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and found it to be most informative.